So quick introduction about CISA. So CISA is Certified Information Systems Audit or Auditor. So it is an ISACA certification, so more related to auditing. So many of them go for CISA. Many of IT professionals as well as the information security professionals go for CISA. Very famous certification, since it relates or it attracts more of the population, both into finance and IT people. So that's on CISA. So let's get started off with CISA Q&A. I'll give a brief introduction as to how to attempt a CISA Q&A, how to attempt a CISA question when you find that in the when you start attempting the question, let it be in a mock test or let it be in the examination. How first of all you have to attempt a CISA question. So hope so the crowd is not very new to CISA and they want an introduction about CISA. Is that right? Yeah. So CISA question. CISA is an objective type examination. It is a 4 hours examination and 150 questions, and each question will have around 4 options. You are supposed to click on the right answer. So how that can happen, or how you can choose the right answer. So that is always tricky, and there are always people who ask as to how I have to attempt an exam, how I have to read a question. So how the easy technique or the best technique is always the following. So it has 6 questions or 6 points to follow if you are going to attempt a CISA questions. How I have to understand or read the question. So this exam is not an easy examination, as I say, it is an objective type examination. You cannot click on a right answer because there is always a concept behind each option, and you have to understand the concept behind each of the question and each of the answers or each of the options, then try to apply that and write it. So comparatively from my perspective, it is always a comparatively a tougher exam than a subjective question or a written examination. So you need a thorough understanding to pinpoint on a right answer. So how you have to read a question. So a question flashes on your screen, how you have to approach the examination. So first of all, read the question eventually as a plain English. So read the question eventually and understand what is that they are asking for. Don't apply too much of a knowledge into it. First have a plain reading as of the question as you read a newspaper. So just a plain reading of the question, read that, try to understand what is the expectation and what is the stage of the question, which is very important, because at different stages the options can have a different answer. So have a plain reading of the question and what is the expectation out of the question. So that is a very first step. Then find the domain from which the question is asked. Many people go wrong here because generally when you practice a mock question, so even in the ISACA Q&A, what you have a domain wise question. So what do, you have totally 5 domains. You read a domain, practice the questions, then you go right. Then what you do, you go to domain 2, read the CRM or read the manual, then you go for the Q&A, then your answering is right. So your mind will get tuned as to, okay, the question is from domain 2. But that is not the case in the examination, where the questions are going to be jumbled and not in a specific order. So you have domain 1 to 5, and predominantly most of the question will fall between 2 domains. So there will be a confusion between which domain it belongs to, how I have to apply that. So find that on finalize as to which domain the question is asked, whether it is from domain 1 or 1, 2, 3 or 4 or 5. So finalize on that part as to which domain or which is the stage in which the question is asked and which domain it pertains to. So always have that understanding, and my kind advice is do all these steps in each of the questions so that you will never go wrong. So that is the second step. Now read the question again with the options. Now you have the plain reading. Now we understood which domain the question is asked. Now we can have a focused answer. So now focus on read the question again with the options. So out of the 4 options, you know that now this belongs to domain 4. So how to read a question, and then again with the options, you will get a clarity as to, okay, this is the expectation and this is what we need to focus on. So that is the third step. Now understand the concept behind each option. That is very important, because don't jump onto a specific answer saying that, okay, this is going to be right. Don't do that. You might eventually go wrong. So there is concept behind each option. You have to have a proper justification as to why you are eliminating a specific option and why that is not right. So don't jump into a specific option and say that this is going to be right. Always eliminate each the option with a proper justification. Yeah. So that is the fourth option, or that is the fourth point which needs to be noted. Then out of the four options, keep eliminating the wrong options with a proper justification based on your understanding. So conceptual understanding is very important here. So unless otherwise you are clear with the concept, you can be very sure that you can go wrong. So this certification is always a test for your knowledge and not a test for your memory. So don't try to memorize anything. ISACA is not going to test on any ISO numbers or any standards specifically or standard numbers or anything. It is going to be test of the concept or test of the knowledge that you have possessed eventually for the last 4 months or 5 months during your preparation, which is very important. Then finalize on the two options. Choose the best suited answer based on the conceptual understanding of the domain. So there is always a meme around the CISA where the two options always look like a twins. Like there is a thin line of difference between two options. So to identify that thin line of difference, you need a strong understanding of the concept behind it. So the steps looks very simple, but unless otherwise you undergo these steps, there is always a chance that you might go wrong because you are in the hot seat. So unless otherwise you do that, there is always a temper, there is always a high pressure in you to answer the question. So calmly undergo all the 6 steps, and eventually you will have time to attempt all the 150 questions in the 4 hours time. So that is on the brief on as to how you have to approach a CISA examination or how you have to approach a CISA question. So do this tip for all the question, have a clear understanding, have a calm examination, you will eventually get through that if you have understood the concept right. Yeah. So I will go through the questions now. So eventually answer your or put your answers in your chat box. We will discuss on each question as to these steps. Yeah. Which of the following types of firewall would best protect a network from a internet attack? Screen subnet firewall, application filtering gateway, packet filtering router, circuit level gateway. I'll just give a minute minute of a time. You can put your answers in the chat box. I'm not going to go through which who have answered what. This is just to give you a confidence of it. So all these examinations, the practice and consistency are most important rather than your expertise in the subject. So CISA is not the subject where you are tested on your expert on IT, because you can imagine myself as a chartered accountant who is very new has attempted this examination and have got cleared with the examination with pretty good score. So always have a consistent preparation and practice which will eventually give you into a good score. So you have to understand the concept behind each of the option, eliminate that, so then finalize on the right answer. So what is a firewall? I have got the answers. So what is a firewall? So first of all, you have to understand what is a firewall. The question is from domain 5, which is protection of information assets, where firewall is part of domain 5. So under that, you have to understand what a firewall means. Firewall is somewhere which lies in between the external router or the external network to the internal network, stands in between in protecting the internal network from being attacked. So that is a firewall. And you have different types of firewall. There are a lot of firewalls that is part of domain 5. Under that, you have to understand what is the nature of each firewall here. So then finalize on the right answer. So packet filtering firewall is not the right answer. I'll show the justification as well as part of notes. But before that, discussing on that, packet filtering firewall, what it does, that is a traditional way of firewall. So what the packet filtering firewall does is that it checks a specific packet. If a packet is received from an external network, it checks for the IP address, whether it is from genuine IP address, whether the sender is genuine. So it has its own limitations, like if the IP address is spoofed, if it is IP address is faked, then it does not restrict on the packet filtering firewall, and that is one of the disadvantages of packet filtering firewall. So it does a basic check and then expands or then allows the packets to the internal network. So if the packet goes through the specific checklist or list of questions, then it allows even if it is not from a genuine sender. So C is not the right answer. Again, the same with circuit level as well. The same like C, it is not that much advantageous to have, or not the best one to protect from the internet attack. So same with application filtering firewall as well, where it works at the application layer, not at the overall package layer. So A is the right answer. Screened subnet firewall, where you have a bastion host, where you have a specific router, where you have the web server. So all these three behaves as a subnet. That is why it is called demilitarized zone. So under this military zone, nothing of the internet attack can attack your network. So you have to understand all these concepts behind that to eliminate B, C, and D and get the right answer. So now I will read the justification by which you will be able to appreciate it. So all these justifications you have to read through in any of the question bank or ISACA material that you read. You have to just not tick on the right answer and go ahead with the next question. You have to read through the justification that is given. Only then you will be able to understand the question, because from the CISA ISACA manual you will not get even a single question from there. It is just a mock question, and nowhere ISACA publish on the actual exam questions. If someone is saying that these are actual exam questions, that is fake. ISACA never publishes on the actual exam questions. Yeah. So a screen subnet firewall would provide the best protection. Screening router can be a commercial router or a node with routing capabilities and ability to allow or avoid traffic between nets or nodes based on the addresses, ports, protocols, etc. Application level are mediators between two entities that want to communicate both in an external and an internal network, and also known as proxy gateways. Application level proxy works at an application level, not at a package level. Just request everyone to go on mute. The screening controls at the package level addresses the ports but does not see the contents of the package. A packet filtering route. Yeah, can everyone go on mute? If you have questions, we can address that at end of the session. Yeah, thanks. Packet filtering router examines the header of the packet or data traveling between internet and the corporate network. So A is the right answer for this question. So all these questions you can find it in question banks or any other material, probably in a different way. And one other thing is you will not have a single liner question in the examination as you look here. So in this we don't want to complicate things by giving a long paragraph, but in examination you will have a paragraph not lesser than a 6 liner. So it will always be a scenario in which you are supposed to take a decision, and that's what they always have a common or a very famous phrase for CISA called like a think like an auditor. So in every question you are given a scenario. Under that you have to think as an auditor and take a decision based on that. The concept will remain the same as we look here, but it is like taking decision based on your expertise. Yeah, so screen subnet firewall is the right answer here, which is from domain 5. Yeah. So moving to the next question, which is which of the following controls would provide the greatest assurance on the database integrity? Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Just request everyone to be on mute. I can hear my voice back. Yeah. So lost my audio for a minute. Yeah. So on question number 2, Yeah. So which of the following controls would provide the greatest assurance on database integrity? Audit log procedure, table link or reference checks, query bar table access time checks, rollback and roll forward database features.
Question session was integrity.
Yeah, just request everyone to go on mute. If you have any questions, we can address that at the end of the session. For now, just go on mute. You can put your answers in the chat box. Yeah. So on the question is on database integrity. So it is from domain 4. So on under domain 4, it is relating to the database management systems. So under that, the question is on database integrity. So what are the three components that relates to integrity? So the three components which relates to integrity will be accuracy, completeness, and consistency. So on accuracy, on the data accuracy, yeah, on the completeness, on the data completeness, how the data is complete on that. So then on consistency, so these three are the components when we speak on the data integrity, how the data is integrated with other tools and ensuring that it is not changed or modified in between the transmission or during the saving or during storing the data. So that is on data integrity. Data integrity can be during the data storage or it can be during data transmission, meaning what is sent is what is received, there is no modification or deletion that has happened in between. That is what is mean by data integrity. More on correctness and completeness of data. So under that, you have to eliminate the wrong options. So eliminating the wrong options first is on the audit log procedure. So in audit log, what does it mean by a log? Log is something that gets saved at the backend. That doesn't ensure data integrity or data consistency. In the audit log, the data gets saved at the backend, which can be used or restored at the later point for either audit or for other purposes. So audit log procedure again is not the right answer. Eliminating rollback and roll forward. Yeah. So it is like post and check. Yeah. It is like you have to have it at the back end, something that gets stored at the back end and saved. That gets saved at the back end. So rollback and roll forward procedure is more related. Yeah, that is on A. On D, again, it is not the right answer. Rollback and roll forward database features relates to the data recovery during the rollback and roll forward. If the data is lost or not able corrupted, then how to recover the data. So that is on rollback and roll forward data features. So A is not the right answer. D is not the right answer. Query table and access time checks. Again, it tries to improve the performance, not related to data integrity. Again, C is not the right answer. So data link and references, which relates to referential data integrity, where two tables you try to link to each other. One table, table one relates have some data, table two has some data, tries to create a different or reference between both of the tables. So that is what is creating a reference. So that is what is called table link and reference checks. So for this, you should be aware of the concept relating to relative database and referential database. So which is part of domain 4. Yeah. So performing table link and reference check serves to detect table link errors such as completeness, accuracy, and contents of the database. Thus, provides a greater assurance on the data integrity. Audit log enable recording of all the events that has been identified, helps in tracing the events. However, they are only point to the event and does not ensure completeness or accuracy of the database contents. Querying or monitoring table checks helps designers to improve the database performance but not integrity. Rollback procedure relates to data recovery or abnormal disruption. They assure integrity of the transaction that was being processed at time of disruption, but do not provide assurance on the integrity of contents of the database. So again, D is not the right answer. Table link and reference checks are the right answer. So B is the right answer for this question. For anyone who is answering that wrong, you have to just go through or practice the question or practice the concept behind it. Nothing wrong in understanding that, but that is the reason you need to understand the concept behind that and try to attempt the question. Yeah. Yeah. IS auditor is analyzing an audit log of database management system DBMS, finds that some of the transactions were partially executed as a result of an error and are not rolled back. Which of the following transaction procedure has been violated? Consistency, isolation, durability, and atomicity. Yeah. So this question is on what? Question is on asset principle, which is part of domain 3. So under that, you have to understand the asset principle completely to understand this question. So asset principle, what does atomicity means? A transaction is either completed or not completed at all. You just reverts back, so that is atomicity. Then on C, consistency, meaning the data is consistent and you don't see the lag between the data, which is data integrity, which is consistency. Then on isolation, isolation meaning all the transactions or all the activity that is performed are independent of each other and not clubbed together. So that is what is isolation. Each transaction or activity is isolated to each other. Then on durability, give an acknowledgement back to the customer on the end or on the conclusion of the transaction. That is what is called durability. I always explain this with an ATM example. What you do, you go and swipe the card. What it says, you give your pin. If you give a wrong pin, what it says, it is a wrong pin, then gives back your card. So that is what is atomicity principle. Either it processes, not processes at all, gives back the to the user with the right acknowledgement. So that is what is atomicity. See consistency, what you do, you go and swipe and take withdraw 1,000 rupees. You go to the nearest branch, put your passbook entry. What it happens, the same transaction gets reflected. So it is called consistency of the data. There is no lag or there is no change or modification in between or there is no lag. It is synchronous. So that is what is called consistency. Then on isolation, you withdraw today morning 1,000 rupees, then at the end of the day you deposit 1,000. No, nothing is clubbed together, right? So both are separate transactions which are getting reflected separately. So that is what is called isolation. Durability, what it says, after you complete the transaction, it says that the transaction is successful, you can take back the card, right? So that is what is called durability. So understand with the real-time examples, which will be easy to understand the concepts behind it. So D is the right answer, which is atomicity. Either the transaction is partially executed or not rolled back, or as a result of error and on or not rolled back. So it has violated what? Atomicity principle. So D is the right answer for this question. When identifying an earlier project completion time, which is to be obtained by paying a premium for early completion, the activities that should be selected are those whose sum of activity time is the shortest, that has zero slack time, that gives longest possible completion time, whose sum of slack time is the shortest. Yeah. So on this question, so which is on slack time, this is from domain 3, which relates to CPM, critical path method with slack time. So in this, you have to understand what is the slack time. Slack time is an activity by which the current activity can be delayed without impacting the very next activity is called slack time. So what it means, if the current activity cannot be delayed, if it impacts, then it means the project is very critical. You cannot delay it even for a minute or even for a day. So that is what is means. And the question speaks on earlier completion of the project, means it has to be completed at the earliest time possible. It means that it should have a zero slack time, though it can never be delayed. Everything or every day is important, and it should not delay by even a day, so that it ensures that early completion of the project. So B is the right answer, that has zero slack time. A critical path activity is longer than that for any other path through the network. This path is important because if everything goes as per schedule, its length gives the shortest possible completion time for overall project. Activities on the critical path becomes candidates for crushing for reduction in their time by payment of premium for early completion. Activities on critical path has zero slack time, and conversely, activities with zero slack time are on critical path. By successively relaxing on the critical path, a curve showing total project cost versus time can be achieved or can be obtained. So B is the right answer. I can see many of them have answered it right. Organization is implementing an ERP application to meet its business objective. Which of the following will primarily, or who is responsible for overseeing a project in order to ensure that the project is progressing in accordance with the project plan and that will be delivering the expected results? Project sponsor, SPDT, System Development Project Team, Project Steering Committee, User Project Team. Very key point is identifying the keyword in the question, which the question is, and from whose point of view the question is asked from. It speaks on overseeing. Yeah, keyword is not just primarily important, so that is not the keyword generally. And no, none is bold, italics, underline, or capital in the examination. Privacy or primarily most important is the keyword, but generally from whose point of view the question is overseeing the project in order to ensure that it is progressing in accordance with the project plan. Where it says what or which is more important to understand is that who is involved in the day to day activities of the project. So progressing in accordance with the project plan and will ensure the expected results, meaning it checks what is the plan and what is the expected result, or whether we are progressing in the right manner. So that is the role, or that is what they are asking for. So it is the role of the steering committee to do or involve in the activities relating to the day-to-day project. More of the project manager who is part of the steering committee. What it means as a steering, meaning ensuring that is into the right path. So that is what is the project steering committee. Project sponsor is one who is funding the project. He might not be involved into the day-to-day operations as to how the progress is happening in the project. Overall, you might understand from the project manager on the progress, but will not involve on the overall on the day-to-day activities of the project. Not B, not D as well. It is the project steering committee. So project steering committee that provides an overall direction of the ERP is responsible for reviewing the project progress to ensure that it will deliver expected results. Sponsor is typically the senior manager in charge for the primary business unit that the application will support. Sponsor provides funding of the project and works closely with the project manager to define the critical success factors or metrics Project sponsor is not responsible for reviewing the progress of the project. The system development project team completes the assigned task, works according with the instructions of the project manager, and communicates back to the user project team. SDPT is not responsible for reviewing the progress of the project. User project team completes the assigned task and communicates effectively with the SDT and works according with the advice of the project manager. UPT is not responsible for reviewing the project or progress of the project. So C is the right answer for this question. I have seen many of them have answered it wrong. So this concept is very important to understand, the concept behind how you eliminate each question or each option. IS auditor is evaluating management's risk assessment of information systems. And the IS auditor should first review controls already in place, effectiveness of controls in place, mechanism for monitoring risk related to assets, threats and vulnerabilities affecting the assets. Let's be a little fast considering the time so that we will have time at the end for discussion. Yeah, comparatively an easy question. So the question is on from the IS order point of view on the risk assessment. So the first step is what are the business objective, what are the associated with the business objective, then understanding the risk assessment, risk analysis, and risk mitigation. So as part of risk analysis, the first step is identifying the threats and vulnerabilities, then understanding what is the impact of it. So the first option or the first thing that an auditor has to do is what are the threats and vulnerabilities affecting the asset. So the D is the right answer. I guess most of them have answered it right. During logical access controls, so the previous question or question number 6 was from domain 1. More question number 7. During the logical access control review, the IS auditor observes that user accounts are shared. Greater risk relating to this situation is that unauthorized user may use the ID to gain access. User access management is time consuming. Passwords are easily guessed. User accountability may not be established. Yes, many of them have answered it right. It is can be a thin line of difference between A and D, but D is more important. So unless otherwise you are there to pinpoint who you have to contact with for any deviation or for any user access deviation or for any violation relating to the user, then D is very important or the accountability needs to be established. So D is the right answer in this question. Many of them have answered it right. During review of customer master file, an auditor observed numerous customer name duplications arising from variations in customer first names. To determine the extent of duplication, the IS auditor would use test of data to validate data input, test of data to determine system sort capabilities, generalized audit software to search address field duplication, generalized audit software to search for account field duplications. Yeah. So the auditor will not use just a test data. He has to use the generalized audit software. So under the generalized audit software, he has to use either account field or address field. It always says that account field has some duplications in the first name. So it is good to go with the address field duplications to eliminate the duplications and check for the master file. So C is the right answer. I guess many of them have answered it right. Relates to database management system, which is part of domain 4. From the control perspective, the primary objective of classifying information assets is to establish guidelines of the level of access control that should be assigned, ensure access controls are assigned to all information assets, assist management and auditors in risk assessment, identify which assets needs to be insured against the losses. Yes. So based on the classification, what you do, if you classify the asset as vital, sensitive, non-sensitive, confidential, based on the organization's requirement, the primary requirement is that what is the level of security that you need to give for a specific asset. So establish guidelines for the level of access control or access security that should be assigned to a specific asset. So A is the right answer for this question. When evaluating collective effect of preventive, detective, or corrective control within the process, IS auditor should be aware of which of the following: point at which controls are excised as data flow through the system. Only preventive and detective controls are relevant. Corrective controls can only be Yeah, corrective control can only be regarded as compensating. A classification allows IS auditor to determine which controls are missing, which is very important from exam for auditor to have a collective effect of preventive, detective, and corrective control in collation of all these three. A is the right answer for this question. The point at which the data flow or the controls can be excised as a data flow through the system. It is collection or it is cumulation of both preventive, detective, and corrective control. So IS order should focus on when the controls are.
Excuse me,
Can
you're
I see?
still on slide 9. You're still on slide 9.
Oh, is it? Just give me a minute. I guess it is taking a little time.
Now I am able to see the question number 10.
Okay. Yeah, can you see question number 10?
Now
Okay.
it's okay.
Now it's okay.
Okay. Okay. I guess it is taking little time lag. Yeah, so A is the right answer for this question. IS auditor should focus on which controls are when controls are excised at data flow through the computer system. Choice B is incorrect because corrective controls may also be relevant. C is incorrect since corrective controls remove or reduce the effect of errors or irregularities and are exclusively regarded as compensatory control, not as a replacement. It will just compensate if some control is not effective. So that is compensative control. D again is incorrect and irrelevant since the existence and function of controls is important, not the classification. Again, D is not the right answer, C is not, B is not, A is the right answer. So to understand or to finalize on A, you should eliminate B, C, and D, then finalize on A. So A is the right answer for question number 10. IS auditor is reviewing access to an application to determine whether the 10 most recent new user forms were correctively or correctly authorized. This is an example of variable sampling, substantive testing, compliance testing, stop-go sampling. Yeah. So compliance testing is the right answer for this question. So C is the right answer. It checks on whether it is yes or no, what it checks on. So C is the right answer for this question. Moving to the 12th question. During audit of business continuity planning, an IS auditor found that although all the departments were housed in the same building, each department has a separate BCP. The IS auditor recommended that BCPs be reconciled. Which of the following areas should be reconciled first? Evacuation plan, recovery priorities, backup storages, call tree. Yes, so human life is always the higher priority. So evacuation plan is the right answer. It is always give importance to the human life. So evacuation plan is the right answer. So A is the right answer. Which of the following satisfied two-factor user authentication? Iris plus fingerprint, terminal ID plus GPS, smart card with PIN requiring user PIN, user ID along with password. Best biometrics, but which satisfies two-factor authentication. So what are the three components of two-factor and three-factor? What are the three components of when you speak on authentication? Yeah, something you know, something you have, and something you are. Something you know is that what you know can be your pins and passwords. Something you have is your smart cards, usernames, something you have. So something you are is your biometrics, your iris scan or anything. So which satisfies iris and fingerprint is both biometrics, both are relating to something you are. Terminal ID and GPS again does not satisfy two-way or does not satisfy two-factor. Smart card requiring a PIN. So which is something you have is your smart card, something you know is the user PIN. User ID and password. Yeah, some user ID along with password. If you have both, then doesn't satisfy on the authentication. You have both, doesn't satisfy on the requirement for an authentication if you have both. So it is not D, it is C. Smart card plus requiring a PIN, which is two-factor authentication. So it has to satisfy any of the two factors out of the three factors. Three factors is your something you know, something you have, and something you are. So it is from domain 5 related to access control. Just go, don't overread the question. So always have in mind iris or retina as the best biometrics. The question is not from that point of view. The question is on the factor authentication, either two-factor or three-factor. IS auditor is reviewing a disaster recovery planning at the financial processing organization has discovered that existing DRP was compiled 2 years earlier by a system analyst in an organization using transaction flow projections from an operations department. The plan was presented to Deputy CEO for approval and formal issue, but it is still awaiting for their attention. The plan has never been updated and tested and circulated to the key management and staff through, though interviews show that each would know what action to take in its area in the event of disruptive incident. The IO's audit report should recommend that Deputy CEO be censured for their failure to approve the plan. The board of senior managers is set up to review the existing plan. Existing plan is approved and circulated to all the key management staff. A manager coordinates for creation of new and revised plan with a defined timeline. Yeah, the question will be very descriptive like this. You will have a paragraph, you have to read through the paragraph, then answer it. So manager coordinates. So the question is from an auditor point of view, what he has to recommend in the audit report. He cannot have a recommendation as to existing plan is approved and circulated to the key management staff, which is not the right answer. He cannot do that. Senior manager is to set up the review of the existing plan, but that will not immediately ensure the current situation or ensure existence of the proper DRP plan. D is the right answer. Manager should coordinate creation of new and revised plan with a defined time limit. That is what is the recommendation the auditor should give in the report. And for each recommendation, the auditor should have a follow-up activity related to that. So in this, the auditor has to follow up on the specific. Yeah, it is a suggestion, but for all the recommendation, the auditor should have a follow-up activity on how it is done or what is the progress on it. So D is the right answer for this question. Primary concern is to establish workable DRP which reflects current processing volumes to protect the organization from any disruptive incidents. Censoring the deputy CEO will not achieve this and is generally not within the scope of IS auditor to recommend. Establishing a board to review the planning, which is 2 years out to date, may achieve an updated plan but is not likely to have speedy operation, and issuing the existing plan would be a folly without first ensuring that it is workable. The best way to achieve is a DRP in a shorter time to make it an experienced manager responsible for coordinating the knowledge of other managers in a single formal document within a defined time limit. So D is the right answer. I guess most of them have answered it right. The feature of digital signature that ensures sender can never later deny generating and sending a message is called data integrity, authentication, non-repudiation, replay protection. Yes, so non-repudiation is the right answer. So all the options are relating to digital signature, or these are the features of digital signature, but which relates to the sender cannot later deny on generating or sending the message is non-repudiation. He cannot later deny on that he hasn't sent, which is called non-repudiation. So C is the right answer. Organization has RTO equal to 0 and RPO close to 1 minute for a critical system. This implies that system can tolerate a data loss up to 1 minute, but processing must be continuous. 1 minute processing interruption, but cannot tolerate any data loss. Processing interruption of 1 minute or more. A data loss and processing interruption longer than 1 minute. So RTO relates to maximum tolerable downtime. RPO relates to maximum tolerable data loss. So data loss you can have up to 1 minute, but downtime you cannot have it. So the processing time should be continuous. So A is the right answer for this question. So it is from domain 4. The last question. So which of the following is a technique that could be used to capture network user passwords? Encryption, sniffing, spoofing, data destruction. Is the right answer. Sniffing. Spoofing is relating to, no, it is not spoofing. Spoofing relates to faking. Spoofing is faking your IP address or faking your, it is more on impersonation. So that is spoofing. So faking your IP address, faking phone spoofing is that calling from a respective bank. So someone represents them as the right person, right? So that is what is called spoofing. That is not the right answer. Here it is sniffing. Sniffing is the right answer. So you just sniff the username password. So sniffing is the right answer, which is part of domain 5 on the attacks. So that's it I have from my end. I just have 17 questions for